Welcome to the Deathcare Marketing Show.
Most funeral homes worry about saying the wrong thing, so they end up sounding like every other funeral home. The problem with that? Families aren't looking for perfect, they're looking for someone they can trust. Today, we're talking about authentic communication and why it may be the most overlooked marketing strategy in funeral service. My guest today is Sherrie Dunlevy, a former television journalist, grief literacy expert, speaker, coach, and author. Sherrie has spent years helping people find the confidence that navigates life's hardest conversations. And today, she's helping us answer a question every funeral professional faces. How do we communicate in a way that builds trust instead of just delivering information? Because the way your funeral home communicates becomes the way your community remembers you. Stay tuned for a great show. Hi, I'm Mary Barnett, and this is the Deathcare Marketing Show. We talk real funeral home marketing, strategy, automation, passion, without the fluff. I've got 35 years of marketing experience, and I'm bringing you Deathcare thought leaders to share what works, what isn't, and what's worth doing now. So let's get into it. This show's title is Stop Talking Like a Funeral Home: How Authentic Communication Builds Trust Before Families Need You. And my guest today is Sherrie Dunlevy, a former television journalist turned grief literacy expert, speaker, coach, and author. Through her work at Graduating Grief, Sherrie helps people become more confident, having life's hardest conversations. And while today's topic is communication, this isn't just about what to say after someone dies. It's about how every conversation, every email, every video, every community presentation, and every interaction becomes part of your funeral home's marketing. So, Sherrie, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Mary, hi.
You are so welcome. I'm sorry if you're hearing hammering in the background. We're just going to carry through, but this is life, right? Things happen,
Right.
Especially in the funeral home business, right? It's things happen and we adjust, and you are an expert at learning how to adjust. In fact, I like to start out every show with asking people's story because no one accidentally ends up in this kind of work. So can you tell us about your journey and why you are in this space and why you're doing what you do?
Well, I was a television news anchor for 16 years. And during that time, my audience got to see me fall in love and get married and have my first son, and followed my pregnancy. And then I got pregnant with my second son, and we had some complications. And it was a high risk pregnancy, and so I had to go on leave early. And so they followed our journey, and our son Brandon was born. He had something called a diaphragmatic hernia, and he did not make it. He lived 29 days, and so
Wow.
yeah, I kind of was thrust into this. I always tell people, this club that no one wants to be a member of. But then once you find other members, you're so grateful because they help you through. It's wonderful. But,
Exactly.
at the same time,
And again, before we go on publicly, like, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like,
well,
I
thank
can't
you.
imagine losing a child. Like, wow. And the fact that you've turned this mess into your message
Yeah.
and what you're doing, but I know God puts things in our life that's going to bless others, and you're using your gift. So bravo. Anyways, keep going.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I always tell people, there's a difference between a good idea and a calling, because when it's a calling, God never stops. And
Right.
that's what my book
Right.
was. My book was a
Yeah.
calling. So we lost our son Brandon, and like I said, we were loved through this and lifted up by so many people, and so many people we didn't expect. But then there were those people that we did expect, right? Like one of
Right.
my best friends, and just didn't show up. My husband, two of his best friends, just we never heard from them again after this happened. Um,
Wow.
and
Wow.
so my best friend, I thought she was going to tell me she was going to come up and help me and just hold me and be there with me, right? And instead she
Right.
said, "I'm sorry, I just can't do this." So that was like compounded loss, because you've just lost one of your closest friends and your son,
Oh my
we felt
God. Oh
so
my God.
abandoned. And
Yeah.
but then 6 years later, she called me back and just kind of wanted to pick up. I always say not where we left off, but kind of like before any of this all happened. And
Right.
while I was cordial, it just wasn't possible, right? Like, how
No,
could you not
no.
even ask me how I've been doing through this time? Like, since you weren't
Right.
there. Um,
Right.
I
And
always
she made a
say,
conscious choice, just to say goodbye. Like she wasn't like she just ghosted you. Because then maybe you thought maybe she was, trapped under something heavy. Right. But the fact that
yeah,
she said, I can't do this with you,
yeah,
wow, that showed her character right there. So
yeah.
that's a huge loss.
So, yeah, it was devastating to me. But then after that phone call 6 years later, that's when I got the calling, because I always say God made me curious instead of furious, because in my ego mind, yes, you have every right to be furious with that. But I was
Right.
curious. It's like, wow, what was that about? And why do people abandon other people? And I was thinking about that. And I found myself going into bookstores and going on Amazon and Googling. And then I got this message clear as day that said, if you want this message out, you're going to have to be the one to write it. And I thought, well, I'm not an author. Like, that's no, no. But that
Right.
message just kept coming back. That's the calling, right? And then I realized after the fact, I just obeyed the calling. And that's how my book, How Can I Help, came out. And it's a
I see it
go-to
right
guide
behind
for
you.
helping. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
go-to guide for helping loved ones through life's difficulties. And basically, it's what to do and what to say to people who are dealing with grave trauma, loss in their life, when you're either too afraid or you're afraid you're going to say it wrong or you have no idea what to do. And so, you know, I didn't come from an expert's point of view because, to me, I'm just a mom who lost a child, but I
Right.
was a reporter. And
Yes.
so I interviewed so many people from so many walks of life. And I asked them specifically, what did your friends and your family do that helped you the most? And then what were some of those things that weren't so helpful? Because my intention with this was, I don't want anybody else to have to have double compounded losses too. If it's
Right.
simply because you're too afraid, now there's a book. Now there's something
Wow.
out there to help you. If you
Yeah.
seriously don't know what to do or you're afraid you're going to say or do the wrong thing, now there's a book that can help you, because people, when they're going through death and loss and divorce and all those kinds of things in life that can be so traumatic, this is when they need their friends and family the most. This is not
Yeah.
when you step back.
No, no. In fact, that kind of ties into this conversation that we're having today, because obviously this show is for funeral homeowners that are looking for ways to streamline their business or grow their business or somehow make sure that they're taking care of their families. So I've looked at hundreds of funeral home websites over the years. And honestly, many of them really do the same. So why do you think funeral professions struggle to communicate in a way that feels genuine based on your experience, not only as a TV journalist, but someone on the other side of the table who's been dealing with grief herself? Like, what do you wish they could say to you when they're helping people through these stages?
I have been blessed, when my father passed away a few years ago, blessed with a wonderful funeral professional that just took such good care of my mother and took such good care of us. In fact, she went to work for them as a greeter after that. Um,
Wow.
but but they were like, we have your back. You don't have to go through this alone.
Mm,
And I'm going to say something that I think it's because they stop at the moment the body has been delivered to the cemetery. And I think it needs to continue. I think that,
yes.
the aftercare is so
Right.
important. And I think this is where a lot of people drop the ball, whether it's grief support or whether it's doing something in your community to make sure that these people know that they still matter and their loved ones still matter, and that
Right.
they don't have to do this alone. So I don't know. Like, I know that a lot of people can't do grief support groups, but you could at least on your website have resources available so that people have this, you know,
Right.
have it in a packet. I was just doing a talk in Erie, Pennsylvania, and the most beautiful story. There was a 83-year-old retired funeral director, female, and she told me that when she was when she was in charge of the funeral home, all those papers and death certificates, she would go 4 weeks, 6 weeks after, and she would personally make a home visit. And she said that always she was invited in. Always people wanted to talk. Always people needed to make that connection.
I
And she
love that.
said, and family members took it over when I retired, and they just hand all the stuff to the people when they come to pick up, the flowers, the blankets, the whatever. And she said, "You've inspired me to go back and say, put me to work. This is what I want to do. I want to go back into the homes and meet with people. They need this and I need this." So it's that power of human connection.
Yeah. Actually, that's what I was gonna say, how do we sound more human? How do we do that? You just said it. Like, that was my next question. Like, people need that human connection now more than ever. I think we're
Yes.
so distracted and with so much noise. We're so distracted with the screens always in front of us. And I think that we've lost that eye to eye, that hug, you know, I think the world is ready to turn around, right? And go back, turn a little more analog than digital,
Mhm.
because they need that. So having those community events, having the aftercare, where I love that idea of actually taking the time, and people are so busy. So it's hard to do that. But if you could, determine one day a week where you're just going to make a couple house calls, I think that's lovely. I think that would be so beautiful. Like, I've lost a lot of people in my life and no one has ever done that. And
No,
I
no.
did,
I mean,
and I,
it just, yeah, that when she said that to me, I almost started crying because I thought, oh my gosh, yes, this is what we need. We're in a society where we went from high touch. You're in a high touch industry, right? The death care industry is high touch. What used to be, but now
right,
everything's become high tech, and so it's just easier to text or send an email instead of picking up the phone and calling someone or knocking on the door and making an appointment and being with them. Everyone thinks it's so much more efficient, but it leaves us deficient, I believe. I
right.
think that it
100%.
it there's something your soul is missing. As a human being, we need that. We crave that. And it's intensified when we're grieving.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's why I think, as you mentioned before, that this industry is really a calling. Like, it's not an easy life, and you choose the life of
No.
being a funeral home owner, director, arranger. You carry that with you. And so you have everyone's grief kind of on you, and you have to find ways of taking balance. In fact, that's where we met. You were a speaker at the California Funeral Directors Association event. Like,
Mhm.
you're a headliner. And I was so impressed. I was saying this before we started the show, with how you were giving them tools to them deal with the stress that comes by dealing with people's death every day. And so,
Right.
I always tell, like, my funeral home, like, you guys are doing sacred work. I'm so grateful for you. But you kind of touched on this before about something they could do. That was one of my questions to you. Like, why do you think funeral professionals struggle to communicate in a way that feels genuine? Are they afraid of saying something wrong, do you think?
Sometimes, and this, we need to be better. I think we need to improve our communication skills, but then we need to mix that with compassion. Right.
Mm,
And so, how can we be compassionate? I think that we can, uh, how do I want to say this? Well, because you're running a business, and then there's this thought of don't bring your personal life to work. Well, I mean, people are bringing
we're
you
humans.
their most vulnerable point, coming to you at their most vulnerable point of their life, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you can't just put up this window and go, well, this is what you're not a robot. Now, you may be
Right.
afraid, you don't know what to do, don't know what to say. Or it may be that you've been in it for so long that it starts sounding robotic, or it just starts sounding the same way. So that's where
Right.
empathy comes in. Sometimes
Sure.
empathy, you realize it when you've lived it. Okay,
Hmm.
but if you've not, and we've got a lot of young funeral directors that never have experienced loss, right? So
Right.
they only know so much. They can only know so much. But if you
Right.
can put yourself in their shoes, empathy is putting yourself in their shoes. What would you do if you were in their situation? Understand that they're afraid, understand, and so in order to do that, it's not so important as to what you say. It's more important as to how you listen to them.
Ooh, that's good.
Okay? Because people need to process their story. They need to process this. That's part of the grief process, right? So it's presence, it's active listening, it's putting your phone away, it's, not checking your text on your watch.
Right.
It's
Or go ahead.
not looking around, to see if there's something else to do. It's literally
Right.
sitting there, leaning in, human touch, human connection, putting yourself in their shoes and trying to understand how you would feel if you were going through what they're talking to you about.
Right. I love that. Actually, that ties right into the next segment. I always give a framework in the show so people can actually take these ideas and put them into action. And today's framework was heard, which is interesting that you said they have to be an active listener because they need to really hear what their not only their current clients but their prospective clients are going through. And heard stands for H is hear before you help. E, empathize, connection before correction. A, avoiding cliches, so trade predictable phrases for authentic presence. R is respond like a human, less corporate, more conversational. Like people just want sometimes to talk about their loved one by asking them, tell me about them. Like what was their favorite thing to do and on the weekends, that would be something. D is for don't disappear because communication continues after the funeral, like you mentioned before. And on that last one on don't disappear, what letter of all these you think the funeral homes struggle with the most? Do you think the disappear one would be the most because obviously they stop the ball after they deliver all the final effects?
I
Or do you
think
think they
it
have a hard time listening?
I think it could be a combination of both. And if you're a busy funeral home, people just come in, come in, come in. There's not enough downtime in between clients sometimes or families.
Right.
So that could be an issue. But I think it's the hard stop because what happens is the person can get along and get through it pretty well when they have their team with them, when they have their family, when they have their friends, when they have their funeral professional, their pastor or their priest, their church family there with them. But eventually everyone's going to go home.
Yes.
And then they're alone sitting in
Right.
that. And that's when they need, and usually like that's when I reach out to a lot of my family and friends. I wait, like I'll do an initial outreach, but it's 2 months, 3 months after, 6 months after, just to just check in and see how they're doing. Little touchstones, right?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
important. It's
Right.
important.
And not just touching them to sell them something else, right? It's not like,
Right,
"Hey, your dad died, it's time to plan your funeral, your pre-plan, whatever." No, it's actually like inviting them to a healing event or,
right.
something that they can get value out of, a conversation, a workshop where you're working through. We did a recent workshop again at our local funeral home, and there was this gentleman, and I use him as an example a lot. So if you're listening to other podcasts, you might have heard this story. He was an army or no man and a doctor, but he was retired. And I say that because he was all obviously into precision. And so he came into this workshop with a notepad and he was scribbling notes, scribbling notes. And when it was time for a question and answer, he said, "Okay, so I've been through the 5 stages of grief. When is this over?" And the grief counselor's like, what do you mean? He's like, I want to check it off. And it keeps coming back. What's up with that? Like, I need this to be over. I've got a line. And she goes, sir, I'm sorry that someone told you that grief is linear, because it's not. It's what is
Secular.
the term?
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know why that didn't sound right to me. And it does. It comes in these grief waves. And being aware of that as a funeral home owner, again, we're speaking to funeral staff, think about that. Like, when the wave hits, and especially if you've been through it yourself, you know that. But it's being there, like you said, for your families, offering comforting communication. I love your idea of taking the time or having someone in your funeral home be responsible for making home visits. Like, remember the old house calls for doctors? I mean, that
Right.
a little before my time, but still, it's like, I remember then in Little House on the Prairie, they had the doctor came a calling. And I think that's a beautiful idea, Sherrie. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So this section is called the try list checklist, if I could speak. So let's make some of this practical for our funeral homeowners. If someone wanted their funeral home to sound more authentic tomorrow, what's the first thing you think they should rewrite on their website? Is there, like, in your communication with being a journalist, is there something you think that maybe it's not on their website, maybe it's in their emails? Is there some kind of messaging that makes them more authentic? Is it just like coming from their own story, or do you have any insights
It
into that?
could be. I mean, I like to hear why you're doing what you're doing and why it's important for you to do what you do. I also
I
think it's
love that.
important for people to know that we know you're at your most vulnerable state, and we're here to help you through that, right? I wanna know that I'm gonna be, cared for and cared about,
Yes.
you
So
know?
projecting that message of that
Right,
we're here to,
right,
because we care about you. We wouldn't have gotten in this business, so to speak, without doing
right.
that. Tell me more about your book, because it keeps staring at me behind you. Um, how can I help? Because this is obviously a tool that funeral homeowners can use, right? To
Right.
help them in their communications um,
It can help
challenge.
yes, it can help anyone, and, it's a very easy read, it's very quick, and it has, a lot of people's stories in it, but then at the end of every chapter, it just really has a list that just do one of these things, and this will show the person that you love and care about that you care, right? And
I
that
love
they're
that.
important. They're important to you. But like I said, the whole intent behind this is that we can all use this because it's so funny. One of the things that I share in the book is this thing that everybody says. Like when I'm doing my talks, I'll say, "Raise your hand if you've ever said this." Mary, if there's anything that I can do, please let me know. Who's ever
Oh,
said that, right? Like
right.
everybody has said that.
Guilty. Guilty.
I
Yes.
always say that, in the book, I have what's helpful and what's not so helpful. I don't say right and wrong because I would rather someone step out awkwardly in the right in love,
With the right heart.
step out
Yeah.
in love than
Right.
awkwardly in love than hold back in fear.
Right. Oh, I love that.
And I'll give you an
Awkwardly in
example of
love.
this.
Yes.
When my son died, um, he was very swollen. His skin was splitting, and I did not want to have a viewing.
No.
So the viewing was private, but they did not tell me that they could remove that fluid and that he could be returned to his beautiful body again. I did not know that, but
Oh,
I did not
oh,
have a viewing.
okay.
But I did have a funeral. So we're coming out of the church, getting ready to go to the cemetery, and a young reporter who did, I'm sure this was his first ever encounter with death. He comes up to me as I'm getting ready to get into the limo to go to the cemetery, and he hands me a potted plant because somewhere he knew you sent flowers or something. It was the
Right.
most awkward thing in the world.
Yeah.
But I
How
felt,
kind of him.
oh my gosh, look what he did. Like, I'm still talking about this 26 years later, right? And my
Wow.
heart expands. And I felt I feel the love from what he did.
Yeah.
And yet I have those other friends who didn't do anything, right?
Right.
And so I always say, "Oh my gosh, do it awkwardly, but
Right.
don't just not do it at all."
Right. I love that. Do it awkwardly in love versus what was the thing about fear you
Yeah,
said?
step out in love. It's what I how I sign all my books. Step out in love. But the whole
Right.
reason I say, what's not so helpful is, if there's anything I can do, please let me know. That automatically puts another burden on the person who's grieving or who's hurting.
Exactly.
It's
That's a
like, oh
great
my
way
gosh,
of
I
thinking
can't
about it.
think. Yeah, I had this one girlfriend that said, "Oh, me and the people at work, we just want to do something so special for your family. Just tell us what we could do." And I'm thinking, I don't even know what day it are. I can't tell you. I have no idea.
No.
And so consequently, they never did anything. Not that I expected them to, but I just did not have the bandwidth, nor would I ever tell
Right.
somebody, "Oh, here's what you can do for us." And neither would
Right.
anybody else. But
Exactly.
but I will tell you that I was giving this talk once. I was doing a training um, for caregivers in a senior community. And one lady
Oh.
said that her aunt said this to her. And she said, and there was one day, honey, oh, honey, if there's anything I can do, you just call me and I will be right there. Well, her car broke down and she needed a ride to work. And so she remembered her aunt saying that. And her aunt said, when she called her and said, I need a ride to work, my car broke down. And her aunt said, do you know what time it is? And she said, no. She goes, Price is Right is on. You know, I don't leave my house when Price is Right is on. You're going to have to find another ride somewhere else. And she said she never talked to her aunt again. So they may ask you, right? And
Oh
so
my God.
what I found is that people aren't going to ask you, but if they do ask
Right.
you, are you going to be willing to do it? Okay. Because that
Right.
disintegrated that relationship, right?
Right.
And that grieving people truly feel that that's just something people say so they can say something nice, but they really have no intention of doing anything anyhow. So,
Right. Right.
a
Right.
better
Just to check it
way,
off their list.
yeah, a better way to do that is to
Yes. Tell us.
give them 3 options of things that you're willing to do. Okay? So,
Yes.
do you need food? Can I do some laundry
Deliver
for
a
you?
casserole.
Can
Yeah.
I watch the kids? Can I pick up the kids after school and take them to a movie, right? 3 things you're willing to do. So I'll never go and offer to clean someone's house, okay?
Right.
Um,
By the way, I interrupted. There was a little bit of a delay. What were the 3 things? You said offer, can I bring you a meal? What was the second thing you said?
well, they can be anything. These are just all suggestions in my
Oh,
book, but just offer
nope.
3
I
things
love
that
it. Willing to do.
you're willing to do for them. Not things
Because
that
that
yeah.
yeah, what I was saying is you said it takes the burden off of the person to think of
Mhm.
something, and then they know in their head, "Oh, these are 3 things that if I need it, I can call them." Then there won't be any awkwardness because they've already
Right.
offered to do that, right? I love
Yes.
that, Sherry.
Yeah.
So helpful. Yeah.
But
So
the
what's
whole
some other
point
things?
behind that the whole point behind that, Mary, is still to this day, I'll catch those words starting to come out of my mouth, and I'm like, "You wrote this book!" So, these are things that to practice, and you practice and, till you get better, and I'm a lot better at it now. But I just
Right,
know that people see this as insincere. They may ask you for something that you're not willing to do for them, and then what are you gonna do? Or they're not gonna
right.
ever ask anything.
Right. So
So,
true. Is
it's
there
just not
anything
helpful.
that you yeah, so we typically so in the show we have something called the good, the bad, and the ugly. And
Mhm.
so this actually is a good transition to that because I think sometimes we don't like you said, it's not right or wrong, right? It's just some are
Mhm.
better than others.
Right.
So we like I said, let me just read what they are and then we can go in any order. So good is what's one communication habit every funeral home should adopt. Something they were going to say. The ugly is what is a communication mistake family member for years? That's something maybe a funeral home has said that they, wow, that's a eek, back up,
Mhm.
back that truck up. Or ugly, what's a communication mistake um, I'm so sorry. That was the ugly is what communication they would remember for years. But the bad was, what's a well-intentioned phrase that often falls flat, which I think you just said. Is there any,
Right,
let me know if I can do anything to help. So that
right.
definitely. But is there
Mhm,
something that a funeral home specifically, I mean, obviously interpersonal, we were talking about that, like what a
mhm.
friend can say, a family member. But is there anything that a funeral home could say that you think would make a big difference in how they are perceived by their families? Like you just said, can we come visit your in your home would be phenomenal.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you think a funeral staff could say?
Well, I think that they could say, this is art where you don't have to go through this alone. And would it be all right if we check on you from time to time just to make sure you're doing okay? Could we
Perfect.
leave you
Perfect.
with a list of services that are available in the community in case you feel that you need help? You
Ooh, I
know,
love that. Yes.
this is, um, and then I think, one of the things that I love doing is I love going into communities where funeral homes will have me come in right at the holidays when people are afraid of what's the holiday going to be like, what's Thanksgiving, what's Christmas going to be like, what's New Year's going to be like without my loved one this year. Everything has changed. You build up
Right.
all these stories in your head. And so I have a workshop on how to navigate the holidays and get those ruminating thoughts out of your mind, and go through some exercises with people and give them ways to recreate the holidays and how to incorporate their loved ones still into the holidays, even though it's going to be different. There are things that we can do to help people that don't take a lot.
Right.
Just take a little bit of thought. But
That is
what here's
lovely.
here's the bottom line.
Okay.
Okay. If you treat people like you have their back, that you care about them, that and they are important to you, they're going to tell all their family and friends how wonderful you were. But if you treat them like a number, they're going to tell everybody else, right?
Exactly.
How
Exactly.
impersonal it was. And so this can either be the best marketing tool or it can be the worst.
Right. Eh, so true. Something I that wasn't on the agenda today, but I was just thinking about the impact that your talk at the California Funeral Homes Association meeting was. Because we're speaking to funeral homeowners, I think some of the um, techniques that you were giving was such a blessing to them. Is there one thing that you can share that would maybe help relieve some of the burden that is on? Because again, we're talking about communication here today, and it seems like there's so much pressure on them to say the right thing or not say the right, the better thing, and that's a
Mhm,
lot, right? Besides doing all the paperwork and the arrangements, and there, um, is there something I remember I loved your breathing technique,
mhm.
but you also had some reframing that you gave, and so since, like I said, we have funeral home people listening, can you share something that, again, they're coming into the holiday season, they're gonna need to have some of those tools, and again, you're for hire, like, you can come out and do this in person. I love your idea of hiring you to come do the holiday to help families with that. But is there something that you can share really quick from that talk that you found is really helpful for people who are on that side of the table, the people
Just
in the work?
right. I think that the breathing helps calm you, right? And so, and like I love the real deep in breath and then the humming, because that helps with your vagus nerve, and that helps release some of that stress, and that lets your body understand that, okay, we're gonna move this through our body. I like shaking things out too. I know
Right.
this is in between clients. um you know
Oh, okay, so stop for a second. So, yes, I think you're reminding me. So I think that was what we were talking about, like, physically, everything can their shoulders are up on their ears, and when they have
right,
back to back, making that time to step out and do that, like that box breathing, right? Where
right.
you're taking a breath for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, was that it, or 8?
Right, 4. It's like a box. You inhale for 4, then you hold for 4, then you exhale for 4, and then you hold for 4. So just think of it as a box that gives your mind something to concentrate on, but also gives your
Right.
body that oxygenation that it needs. And it just gives
Yes.
you a little break. And you can do that with your eyes open, with your eyes closed. You can do it, in a meeting. No one has to know that you're doing it. You can do
Right.
it in between clients. One of the things that I like too is just the act of, I said, like a doormat, wiping your feet before you enter into the next phase, back to home with your family, or, your personal life of maybe something's going on in your life and you just wipe that off so that you can be present with other people. But it's just really using your mind also, to help you compartmentalize it a little bit, to be
Yeah.
present, to
Yes.
say, this is where I am now. Everything
Right.
that I have going on is in the background right now. This
Right.
presence with this person, this active listening, this is where I need to be. In between, though, let's take care of me. Some of the things they've told you, one of the ones is just running your hand underwater for 30 seconds and just concentrating. It's called mindfulness, but just concentrating on the temperature of the water. It gives your brain an assignment instead of, oh my gosh, I got to talk to this next family, and then I got to do this, and then I got to do that, and the stress that comes
Yeah.
all the time with everything coming
And
at you at once.
yeah, and it's hard to be your full wonderful self when you have all that stuff going on in the back. So I kind of jumped back and then over again, but this is so powerful. You're sitting in a room with like 50 funeral professionals that were doing this all at once. We were doing the breathing, the box breathing. We were doing, and you mentioned about the humming, because when you said like running your hand under cold, like your wrist under cold water, that stimulates your vagus nerve. The humming also does that. And it's
Mhm.
interesting, you think, oh, that's nothing. But oh my gosh, it is so powerful. Like you don't, that whole
3 times. 3 times is all it takes for that humming.
okay. So let's do it really quick. I think it'd be fun. So
Okay.
let's just they know what we're talking about. So kind of show how to do it, and
What
I'll
we're
do it
gonna
with you
do
one
is
time.
we're gonna inhale real quick and real deep, and then we're gonna do
Okay.
a quick inhale and a long exhale, but as we exhale, we're gonna hum. And as you
Okay.
hum, that stimulates your vagus nerve. So do you wanna do it just once, or you wanna do it 3 times?
Oh, let's just do it once.
Okay.
We're gonna do
All
it
right.
twice. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Deep breath
I'll
in.
follow your lead. Okay.
Exhale.
That's a long way. And then
It
do it one
is.
more time. Do it one more time. We'll
Okay.
go. All right. You know what's weird is you could totally feel
Yes.
it's like almost like a waterfall through your body. And I literally felt my shoulders relaxing. That is so
Mhm.
wild. Thank you, Sherrie. Like that is something. And you could even make it like a silly thing with your coworkers. You could be like, all right, it's time to hum, everybody, right? And then you make it so everybody kind of giggles afterwards, but again, what a powerful remembrance that just like in an airplane, you put your mask on yourself
Mhm.
first before you can take care of other people. And if you're not
Right,
taking care of
right.
yourself as a funeral professional, you can't help your families to your highest self. And so I think
But
that
just think if you have a client, yeah, just think if you have a family and you have a woman that's just inconsolable, and if you can get her to just do one of these exercises, I mean, you
that's a
can
great
actually
idea.
help.
Oh my gosh, that's a brilliant idea. Right, by helping them through it that they can take home and continue to do. So when you do
Mhm,
check on them, you say, "Hey, how are those breathing exercises going? Are they working?" Like, what a
mhm.
human way to connect with someone by sharing something that'll work and then remembering it. Because everybody, like every time you ask, like, "Oh, how's your dog Fido?" or whatever, you remembered his name. Thank you so much. Like
Mhm.
that, it goes so long, and that's where the human part comes into, right, Sherrie? Like
Right,
remembering those little details that makes people feel like you really did hear them
right.
in the
People want to
in the
they wanna
conversation.
feel seen, heard, valued, understood, and validated.
Ooh, say that again, please.
They want to
People
feel
want to be what?
seen, heard, valued, understood, and validated.
I love that. It's so true. Yeah, and that's what a
Love
true
it.
friend does, right? Like
Mhm.
that's somebody who you know are your people when they can do all those things for you. Mm, I love that. Okay, so the fast fix. Oh wait, rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you a few sentences, and I just need
Okay.
you to answer right off the top of your head. All right, this
Okay.
will be fun. You're a TV journalist, so this will be easy for you. Okay, the most powerful words a funeral director can say are.
I'm here for you.
Oh, perfect. One phrase every funeral home should retire is. They shouldn't say
Mm.
anymore.
It shouldn't say
Thanks.
anymore.
Come again.
Yeah. It it just give it some time.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. By the way, I just went fuzzy, so hopefully we'll go back to being clear. Whoa. The magic of TV. Okay, ooh, that was really good. Just get yeah, stop saying that. Just give it some time. Yeah, that's so rude. Um, or they've gone to a better place. Even though we know or that we are going to heaven, you don't need to hear that in the moment. Really, anyways. Next phrase. Authenticity sounds like
Love.
oh, that's good. The future of funeral home communication is
Wide open.
nice. And the best marketing message is
We're here for you now and in the future.
all right. Very cool. Because inevitably we all will need their help, sadly.
Mhm.
It's so true. So last thing, if a funeral home wanted to strengthen trust with their community this week without spending a dollar, what's the first communication you'd encourage them to improve?
Oh, yeah, human connection, face-to-face communication.
I love it. Yeah, it's that
Personal touch.
one-on-one.
Mhm.
Personal touch. I love that. So before we wrap up, I asked the guest on the Deathcare Marketing Show this question. If you could leave every funeral home owner with one piece of wisdom, and we've shared a lot today, by the way, Sherrie, like seriously, I'm so grateful for all your wisdom, your experience, what you've poured into your book that people can take and use every day. It's amazing. But what's one lesson that you've learned that could help them serve families better, build trust, or grow their business? One piece of wisdom, what would it be?
When you show people that you truly care, it it means everything and could be the best marketing strategy that you have.
I love it. I love today's conversation because it really does remind that marketing isn't just about getting people to notice your funeral home, but it's giving them a reason to trust it. The way your
Mhm.
funeral home communicates becomes the way your community remembers you, right? Every conversation, every email, every social media post, every presentation, every interaction, they're all telling your story. And the most trusted funeral homes aren't the ones with the perfect script. They're the ones that sound like real people because we need to remember that people don't connect with polished, they connect with genuine.
Right.
So if you're a funeral home owner and if this helped, please share it with another funeral home owner who needs it because let's do what works and drop what doesn't. And we'll see you next time on the Death Care Marketing Show. Thank you so much, Sherrie, for being my guest
Thank you,
and
Mary.
have a
It was
wonderful
my
day.
pleasure.
You're welcome. All right. See you guys next time. Bye.